Senator Dugan, appreciate you for
Yeah.
doing this interview.
It's my pleasure.
Helping me out with my research paper, but congratulations on your election.
Thank you.
I know it was hard fought and definitely an underdog type story, I would say. But we'll go ahead and get to some questions. The first is, when the seat became open, what sort of process did you use to determine your candidacy? Like, what factors did you look at, like as far as your family, the demographics of the district, timing, your background, stuff like that, when you were deciding if this was something that you wanted to do?
Well, the first thing that I did was, you obviously got to take your family in consideration. Are they comfortable with the fact that their life is going to change a little bit? My wife, not so much. She's the CEO of Boys and Girls Club of Metro Atlanta, so she's out and engaged a pretty good bit. She's a more natural politician than I am, but I also have 2 kids in college, and I know that you're in the library studying all the time, kind of guy. But there's an increased scrutiny from both their peers, the people in the towns where they live, and the faculty. Their faculty have followed this race too. So, I had to get buy-in from all of them. And I had to decide, was this the right time in my life to do this? And I looked at the landscape, and I reevaluated my reasons of why I wanted to put my hat in the ring, and I said, yeah, it all fits. It's time to do it.
Right. Do you think I know you're a military man, do you think that background too helped you maybe put it over the top as well, and how the community would respond with a man of military service?
That's really a 2-part question. The South is extremely patriotic as a group, with Georgia being in the South, but our part of the state seems to be even more so. Now, a lot of the reasons that I decided to run are a lot of the same reasons that I went into the military 25, 26 years ago. It's about service. It's about contributing, participating in something that's bigger than yourself. It's about accomplishing something at the end of the day that you can look back on, know that you've had a positive impact, and be proud of. So that's why I served. Those same thought processes is what got me in this race a little bit. So it helped. It helped. I'm not going to lie. That was a significant portion. You say, people ask, what was your background? And you go, I'm a retired Army Ranger. And they go, okay. How long did you serve? 20 years, 2 months, 4 days. Were you ever deployed overseas? Yes, I was in Bosnia. I was the first guy on the ground in Bosnia. I went to Afghanistan twice. I went to Iraq twice. So that builds up a comfort zone with them. There's an inherent amount of trust that they give you because of your military background. The other side of that is, now I've got an ever increased burden on me, never to let anybody down, because I'm not just letting myself down, my family down, my constituents down. I still got a lot of friends that are in the military. They followed this thing. I won't let them down either. So, yeah. Right. I'm going to do my best to be perfect.
Right, definitely. So going into the campaign, you threw your hat in the ring. You had a former Speaker of the House who was probably one of the more powerful positions in the state. Mm-hmm. You had a state representative that served for 18 years previously, and then mm-hmm. you had a local Carroll County businessman also in the race with you. How did you think your prospects were matched up to those guys in that race going into the primary?
I really thought they were good. I know that people look back now and say there's no way you could have thought they were good. And it played out pretty much exactly how I thought it was going to. And I know how egotistical that sounds, but it's not based off ego. It's based off just raw analysis on my part. I knew that we were going to, Jim Naughton is the local Carrollton mm-hmm. businessman. His family is the Southwire family. I knew that we were going to split Carroll County, primarily Carrollton, a little bit. I knew that that Glenn Richardson had a strong background and a lot of knowledge, and he had a strong following in Paulding County. Mm-hmm. And I knew that Bill Hembry was going to do well in Douglas County. He was going to creep over into Carroll County with the Villa Rica area because of a background. And I wish I had transcripts of this, but we said early on, get this thing to a runoff, and we'll win. And if you look at the numbers, you go back and look at the numbers, and you look at the early vote, I got killed.
Yeah.
You look at the vote on election day, our numbers were pretty close. So the name recognition that he had, the capital that he had to put in on the investment because there was such a short duration between when we all declared and when the early voting actually started.
Right.
Bill Hembry just kind of wore me out on the name recognition. And the other thing is the guy I was replacing was a guy named Bill Hamrick.
Right.
A little bit later in the process, during the runoff, when I'm meeting some potential constituents up in the Temple, Georgia area, one of the guys went, "Well, Mr. Dugan, we like you, but Bill Hamrick's always done a good job." And I said, "Sir, he's not running." So it hadn't dawned on me to that point that wasn't a factor I'd taken in, that the names were so close that people saw Bill and H and assumed that I was running against the incumbent. Yeah. But when we got into the runoff, and it is close to 60% Carroll County. Mm-hmm. I am from Carroll County. Right. My family has been there forever. I'm a Bowdoin graduate. I went to West Georgia, got 2 different degrees from West Georgia. My family is still there. My kids went to school there. I'm the president of the Kiwanis Club. I'm on the Carrollton Housing Authority Board. I was on the West Georgia Athletic Foundation Board. Since I retired and moved back, we've been active in the community. Right. So we just had to get everybody caught back up with us.
Yeah, right.
And it turned out all right.
Yeah. And so going into the election, you knew you were going to run. Mm-hmm. Did you hire a consultant? Did you look at that? Did you have a strategy in place specifically for the primary that you said, obviously Representative Hembry could probably win it outright. What do we do to take numbers from him enough to, get us into the runoff? What was your strategy at that point to try to get into the runoff?
Yeah, I did think about a consultant. I couldn't afford a consultant. In hindsight, I'm glad that I couldn't afford one, because and it's my personality anyway, but what it forced me to do even more so than if I'd gotten a consultant, would rely on my own instincts. Mm-hmm. When somebody called and said, "We would like to meet with you," get my truck and go. During the 3 months that the campaign was going on, I put like 7,500 miles on my truck. Didn't leave the district. Just driving. Somebody would call and say, "I need you here." I would go to, you look at it and you go, you literally went house to house as much as I could. And I didn't have a volunteer group that went along with me. I was 4 weeks into it before I got a campaign manager. And that came out when I was at a Founders Day in Mount Zion, Georgia. It's a great community, real small. And this guy saw me working and talking to people there. He called me at home that night and said, "I like what you're doing. You need somebody to help focus your efforts." He says, "Right now, you're scattering too much." And I said, "Okay, will you be my campaign manager?" And he said, "Yeah, I'll do it." And it worked out really, really well. But the whole effort was just go and meet people. When people called you, call them back. Don't ever slack up. Don't ever underestimate the power of going to that one guy's house. The real secret to the success that I think, other than just working my tail off, was influencing the influencers. You talked about the military aspect a little while ago. We would do that. That's how we operated when we got to different environments. Is you would find who's the influencer in the town that you've gone into, and it's not going and talking to them. It's going and to get him to buy into your cause, to believe in you.
Right.
Because if you can get him to buy in, then one, he's going to introduce you to a bunch more people, and the other aspect of it is he will talk or she will talk to hundreds of more people than
it's like
you
a
can.
Pay It Forward campaign.
It really is. It really is. With no obligations. That was the people are saying, well, what are you gonna have to promise? Nothing. All they want is, at the end of the day, to know that if they send you an email, you're gonna send them an email back. If they call you and you can't answer right away, you'll call them back. If they, as much as possible, when they have events that are important to them, you actually show up. Because it should be important to you as well. So they want to know somebody's going to work hard, be a decent person.
Right. Definitely. So the primary was held on November 6th, which was general election day for the rest of the country. Many Republicans who were in this primary are going to the polls to try to vote out President Obama. They're not thinking about a special election out in Carroll, Paulding, and Douglas County.
They weren't?
Some were,
Okay.
I guess.
I thought that's the reason they all showed up.
But yeah, that's true. But the way that the whole race was set up, to where it would be a primary held on November 6th. And the way that the election result came in, Bill Hembry, who was a former state rep, got 48.4% of the total vote. Almost clinched it because in Georgia we have to have a majority rule vote. And, at a 70% turnout rate, and then to come back a few weeks later on December 4th in a runoff and see that when it had 6.9% turnout, do you think that benefited you more having a lower turnout the second time around in the runoff?
You would assume so. The other way of looking at that thing is that 6.9%, 7% of the voters are the informed voters.
Right.
They're not casual voters. They're not people who went in to vote for another race and went down and said, oh, that name looks familiar. Don't know anything about them, but that name looks familiar. Let me check that one. Because a lot of voters have a hard time. It's like taking the SAT, which is probably not a good analogy, but leaving that blank unchecked, they're going to check something. So when you had that extra step, that runoff, and that is so common. Go back and look through the races in Georgia. How many times the guy that came in second in the first round won the second round? Because it's a lot.
Yeah.
And that's the informed voters have gotten back out there. The ones that really feel like they have a dog in the fight, the ones that the race is extremely important to them,
Right.
they will get back out there and vote.
Right. So you would agree that maybe, or you would agree with the statement that 6.9% turnout is, not the actual voice of the people, but that is the more informed vote. Those are the people who, were voting based off, what they thought they would have benefits from you and from Bill Hembry, and they were voting with a high and informed vote almost.
Yeah. You put that, look at that at multiple levels. And you brought it up yourself. It's a December vote. So they're obviously somewhat informed because how often we vote in December?
Never.
So, those are people who follow the process.
Right.
Because there was not there wasn't a big media blitz. There wasn't television and a whole bunch of, there were radio ads, but there was not a huge media blitz. Get back out there. So,
Right.
Yeah, they showed back up to vote. So is it the voice of the people? Yeah.
Yeah.
If, if on the first round, if there was 72% turnout, does that not count as the voice of the people because it wasn't 100%? We can get down to the next one. So then when I'm running against the Libertarian in January and it was not even 5%, is that even,
Right.
that's the informed voters.
Right.
The ones who really feel like they need to participate to influence their futures.
Right. I can, yeah, I definitely agree. So once you clinch the spot in the runoff that, on November 6th, how did the campaign strategy change from maybe from, trying to get your name out there for those few weeks before the primary to getting into gear to, because turnout was going to be lower, to getting, maybe absentee ballots out to folks, trying to influence some of that early voting to get people, because it was going to be tough to get another 60-something percent, 70-something percent to come out and vote a second time. How did the campaign change strategy-wise to where you felt, you could pull it off in the runoff?
Didn't change at all. Didn't change a method of how I operated one bit with any of the 3 rounds. It still was just going door to door. We call it door to door, store to store. And you just engage. And then you circle back around and you re-engage with people that were committed to you early on. Make sure that they know that they haven't been forgotten, that you still remember that they're out there, and thank them for their support. And that's, at the end of the first round, you call those people back up and say, we've made it through 1 round. Thank you for everything you've done. I need your help one more time. And then you call them again beforehand. But then as soon as you get through the first round, people go, dang, Dugan's got a shot. So they start picking up the phone. They start getting on Facebook page and their LinkedIn accounts. We use social media a lot. And, I'm not a huge, I had like 40 Facebook friends for this thing started. And they were, I think, are all family members. By the time the elections came around, you have over 1,000. And then they link it to their friends. So, we just kept reminding, kept pushing that don't forget, this is important.
Right.
And they went back out and voted.
Definitely. So on December 4th, you won by pretty surmountable margin. How did you feel knowing that now you've done 2 rounds worth, you've beat an 18-year incumbent, and
See, I'm sorry. I don't look at it that way. I won the seat. I didn't beat Bill. I didn't beat Glenn. I didn't beat James. I garnered enough support from people to win this seat. This is not a race against other people.
Right.
This is a race. And I've said it 1,000 times out there, and you weren't there. It's a job interview. When you're going through a job interview, you didn't beat out. You were given the job.
Right.
And that's the way it was a long job interview. It was the longest job interview I've ever been on, but it was a job interview you don't beat your opponent.
Right.
You get hired to do a job.
Right.
I'm sorry. I
No,
cut off your question.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That's a good way to put it. I don't know if there's too many people, in politics that think of
It's not a
stuff
game.
that way. Yeah.
It's not a game.
That's an interesting take. Definitely. So on December 4th, you won. How did that feel? Just knowing you were going to be the new state senator.
December 4th, I didn't think I was. I didn't feel. I took the same intensity, the same. I kept going straight through January. What I was telling supporters, if we assume that we've won, we've lost. Don't ever assume.
Right.
Get back out there. Let's do it again. And even going at 6:50 on January the 8th, I'm out there. My kids haven't gone back to school yet. My wife's out there. We're holding signs. We're going to the stores around the different towns, reminding people today's election day. Go vote.
Yeah.
And I was sweating bullets walking into the election office that night, because you don't assume anything.
Right. Yeah, so it's kind of weird how, obviously, on December 4th, there's a runoff going on in Georgia. Then to turn around and on January 8th, when hardly no elections are going on anywhere across the state, to have an election. How did that get determined maybe by the Secretary of State's office to where, the dates set up the way they did, and how, just how odd that was, that people were going to have to go to the polls, in the cold in January instead of in November?
I wouldn't presume to know what the Secretary was doing at that point. All I knew was what the ground rules were, and react and work within the ground rules that were given. The fact that it was on, the last round was on January the 8th, I turned it into a positive because, you think you got a hard time getting people to remember when a random election is on any other month. It's a lot easier when you say, watch the BCS championship game, next morning get up and go vote.
Right.
And people around here won't remember the election. They'll remember when the football game is. So
That's
you
true.
just tied the two together and say,
Yeah.
watch the game next morning, go vote.
That's interesting. So, obviously, you look at the districts when you're deciding to run, how the demographics look across the district. We knew the district was set up, to help the incumbent at that time, who's now Judge Hamrick, and he's from Carroll County. Do you think, obviously, looking at the district and the maps and the precincts, that the district itself was more geared to have somebody from Carroll County be their senator versus Paulding or Douglas?
Do I think, and I'm going to pick on you a little bit, this district is 60%, 58 point something percent Carroll County, and 22 Paulding. Actually, Paulding is the second largest county
Right.
in the district, and then 20 some odd Douglas. It's. I would be hypocritical if I didn't sit up here and say that the people from Carroll County like the fact that they have a senator from Carroll County. Right. And I am from Carroll County, but I go to as many activities in Douglas County and Paulding County as I do Carroll County.
Right.
And the challenge that I've taken on since the election is to make them feel the Paulding and Douglas County constituents I'm their senator. Right. That they can count on me as much as somebody from Carroll can count on me, and that's important to me. That's I'm gonna keep stressing it in the town hall meetings and how we break those down, because we do a town hall meeting a month. I'll do 2 in Carroll, next one in Paulding, next one in Douglas. 2 in Carroll, next one in Paulding, next one in Douglas, and we'll follow that same routine until they decide. Until I decide I'm done, or they decide they want to put somebody else. Until they decide I'm done,
Right.
I guess.
So, just looking back on the election as a whole, is there anything else that you want to say just about the election? Maybe some more of your strategy or anything like that that you want to just add to the interview? Looking back in hindsight and then having. Being able to look at the returns and maybe something that you would improve on or do different.
I don't. That's a tough question. I've never run for anything before. It's the first thing I've ever run for, and it turned out all right. I wouldn't change the fact that hard work is the most important part of it. I wouldn't change the fact that I actually enjoyed going out and meeting people, and if you don't like talking to them, if you don't like listening to the problems, then you're probably in the wrong line of work. Right. I don't like raising money.
Tough to do. Ask
I sent a lot back because my thought process is I can either take money from a lot of special interest groups, which is easy to do, or I can from the constituents, which I have to go out and look them in the eye and say, I need your help. And I opted to go with the constituents. I would love to say I had no reservations when you open that check from a special interest group that could really buy a lot of yard signs or whatever and put it back in the envelope and send it back and say, thank you, I appreciate the thought, but that's not the way we do it. I don't know what I would change. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the process. I'm sure I could have been a more efficient. That's what I would have got my campaign manager sooner. I would have found him quicker because we did waste some time at the onset.
Yeah. So I know I want to make sure we have this so I can put it in my paper. Earlier we were talking about people with political backgrounds. You don't have a political background, and I think there's a point of pride from you that I saw early on today that maybe you don't like having that, being of the people and having a different background than politics. And when I said politician, I think you made a really good statement there, and I want to make sure I get what we were talking about earlier on the interview.
Yeah,
So just tell me basically what we were talking about earlier.
Well, we've gone through it a few times over the course of the time period. I hate that moniker, but now it's become it's so ingrained in society. I'm not a politician. I'm a public servant. That you almost expect a politician to say that now. I am a politician. As soon as I decided I wanted to run and qualified, I became a politician. It's not a term that I will ever be comfortable with. Public service is why we're here. If you're here to satisfy your ego, if you're here to advance your own personal agenda, then you're doing it for all the wrong reasons. If you are not here, if you're not focused on meeting the demands of your constituency, if you're not focused on making their lives better, then you're doing it for all the wrong reasons. And I understand how corny that sounds. I got it. If I was you and I was sitting there listening.
But it's a good point, though, I think.
Yeah, but the only way that I can prove that I'm sincere is over time. Right now, it's just talk. Right. And I'm hoping that 10 years from now, you look back at this interview and went, he was right. He did what he said he was going to do. Definitely. And then I'll be successful.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you giving me some time to come do an
my
interview.
Pleasure. My pleasure.
Definitely.
Hope you get an A.
I appreciate it.